Welcome to the DTF Printing Podcast.
I'm Adrienne Palmer, Editor-in-Chief of DTF Printing.
I'm here with Milissa and Tim Gibson. Milissa and Tim own High Voltage Studios in Austin, Texas. Milissa is also the sales director at Lane 7, and Tim is the enterprise sales manager at Supacolor. Today we're chatting about how to best work with your vendors, what it's like working in the same industry as your partner, and the future of DTF in the apparel industry. Hey, Milissa and Tim, thanks for hopping on.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hey, Adrienne.
So where to even begin? Melissa, why don't you start by sharing your background in the industry?
So I think this is officially my 15th year in the industry this January. And I started with Liberty Bags way back in the day, and then went to Next Level from there and US Blanks from there as sales director. And then last few years I've been with Lane 7. So kind of taken a wild journey, but mostly on the apparel side.
Right. And Tim, what about you?
Oh, it's long. So I started like many of us as a musician, needing a job and having long hair and, tattoos and such. So I worked as a screen printer to go through college. I was going to college to be a sound engineer and ended up getting into the video music business. But I started as a screen printer, then a production manager, then a very large shop production manager. But I'd see the sales guys cruising in, around 11 noon in their Mercedes and BMWs. And is my order ready, man? And I need to do that. Like, I want to be in sales. So I started in sales, so selling screen printing and embroidery for a company I was working at. Then I moved to Las Vegas and I worked for Reebok as a licensed apparel rep for them. Then I moved on to a big promotional company, a PPD called Spec Pro. I was with them for 4 years, built a team with them, and then started my own company called The Marketing Group in 2004 and ran my own business as a PPD basically for about till 2010 when the economy died in Vegas, and then moved back to the Bay Area where I'm from to NorCal, and then went to work for Bodick and Rhodes, which was purchased by Alpha Broder eventually. And then at the time, Next Level had exclusive with Bodick. So I took a job at Next Level as their Western Regional Sales Manager. Same time Milissa started. We both kind of started at the same time at Next Level. It's how we met. And so from Next Level, I was then recruited by Danny Harris from Bella Canvas. Danny and Megan Spire actually brought me into Bella, so I became their national strategic sales manager. Then for about 5 years almost, then Haynes recruited me to be their director of sales on that side. And then recently, Supercolor. So I kind of took some time off, between the Haynes gig, and just kind of we spun up High Voltage, which has been really fun. And really wasn't looking for a job, actually, but I ran into Hazel and Rum at a party in Fort Worth, and they cornered me in this little office at Brett's place for about 2 hours, and we just kept talking, and we came to an arrangement. So I'm happy that I'm with them. So it's been fun.
Wow, what a history between both of you for the last many years in the apparel industry. That's awesome. But yeah, tell us a little bit about High Voltage Studios and how that came to be and how you're working together on the actual print side of things.
Yeah, so we had a little commercial space here in Austin, downtown. We had a condo downtown off South Congress too, and it really just needed a place to jam and play music where I wouldn't destroy my neighbors because we had, a condo. We just decided, hey, let's just start a little screen printing shop too and just do some stuff for ourselves, because the goal has always been really just to support the music community. And there's a lot of great artists here in Austin, and a lot of great distilleries and breweries. And, so we're very selective about our customers we work with. We don't it's all word of mouth for the most part. We don't do a ton of advertising. It's very small. We like to call ourselves a boutique shop because we want to do really high quality work, and we want to work with fun clients. So we're very particular. And then, COVID. So COVID happened. So we were both off the road. And so we were just, we started printing masks for people, and that just developed into more apparel business. And it's just continued to organically grow by itself.
And it's not just a print studio, it's also a recording studio, right?
Yeah. So 2020, December 2020, we,
you're in our recording studio.
Oh, cool.
The control room. But we bought a property right outside of Austin, out in the country, and we built a 2,000 square foot building out here, which we're sitting in now. And the front half, which you're in now, is the recording studio. So it is a fully functional recording studio. There's a live room on the other side of this glass here. And we do recording in here. And then on the other half of the building is our screen printing shop. So we have an auto and a couple manuals, a couple heat presses, obviously, speaking of DTF, which has been a big part of our business so far and growing. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept, bringing your interests all under one roof for you both. It's apparel decoration and music, specifically recording music. I think I've kind of seen this before. Maybe the first thing that comes to mind is kind of, tattoo shops that also have a screen printing shop. But maybe I'm sure there are other parts of that. But what are your tips for other business owners who are looking to add their passions together with printing and whatever tie-in that may be into an actual business?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to be passionate about it. I think we're both, we're both have been in the industry so long, and we've seen, other shops and business owners be very successful at what they do, and maybe not necessarily have a niche or a specialty, for example. And we thought, we could probably do a pretty good job of this on our own between our experiences, and we just love it. Like I obviously love the music part. Milissa loves the money part and the sales part. So she's kind of the business manager. She does all the quoting and all that, because I probably just give stuff away too cheap all the time, which I'm always like, oh, they're just musicians. Don't charge them that much. But we'd never make any money if I was doing the pricing. So.
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice is, if you're going into a specific niche, and like we've done, is go really hard into it. And everyone we've talked to from a brand standpoint has always said, like, lean all the way in. Don't kind of go in, jump fully in, but don't let it eliminate opportunities for you, right? Part of and musicians in particular, it's just something people want to be around, right? That just because we focus on kind of doing music merch and stuff, it's brought us all this corporate business because we're just kind of a cool place to be. So they want that vibe. So if you've got something you're really passionate about, go all in and be authentic and live to that.
I love that. And especially, not saying no to other opportunities. Kind of, Tim, like you said, you're now working for Supacolor. Obviously, Melissa, you work for Lane 7. Like, you're not saying no to other opportunities. You're doing this and something else. And you also mentioned a little bit about word of mouth. Are you finding that more people are coming in for merch and printed apparel, and then they're like, oh, and I can record my music? Or are people coming in to record music and then saying, oh, you could print my merch?
Yeah, it's kind of gone both ways. It's interesting. We'll have people that'll come here to the shop, and then they'll do a tour, and they'll see the studio, and they'll be, oh man, like I'd like to do my podcast from here, or I have a YouTube channel. I'd love to shoot some YouTube footage here at your studio. And so we've got some studio business from the screen printing side, and then vice versa. On the studio side, there's a few companies. There's an amplifier company called Black Vault in Los Angeles. And he said, hey man, can you do some swag for me? And so it just they kind of just coexist. But it's just a fun place to hang out, and people come and they just want to be around it, and they want to be part of it. And for us, it's important, like for me specifically, to give back to musicians and artists, because I feel fortunate that, I'm in a position I am when, at one time I was just a starving musician and living on couches and, touring and stuff like that. So it's nice to be able to give back and help people like that.
And one of the biggest things that we're doing and focused on is, it doesn't just go back to just an individual artist that we're trying to work with or, helping them out, making sure instruments are in the hands of the less fortunate. The more creative of an environment we have all around us, the better we all end up being. I'm probably the least creative person you're ever going to meet, but I know that I get elevated because of the people that we get to interact with and their creativity.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was watching a video on your website, and it showed that you have all kinds of instruments already in the recording studio. So it seems like people can just kind of come and figure it out on their own, and they don't necessarily have to have the full setup, which is really cool, especially as you mentioned, Milissa, on the creative side. Like, you can kind of just go for it. And it seems like just have fun and be in a artistic and creative space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk DTF. I think we talked already a little bit before offline that you don't have DTF in-house. Are you ordering your transfers? I guess maybe I should say, are you ordering now from Supacolor? Were you ordering from Supercolor before? And it would make sense that you are ordering from them, considering that is who you work for.
Yeah, well, and that's the interesting part about it. So we were customers of Supercolor before, obviously, I started work for them, and Milissa through Lane 7 has done a lot of collaborations with Rum and Supercolor. So we are already fans of that brand. And, without being a homer, I tested lots of different transfer DTF before, I started ordering regularly from Supercolor, and it just performed better. And as a company to work with, they are just so great to work with. And I mean that, honestly, is they're just great to work with. So we started ordering, Supacolor during COVID, actually, when the whole mask thing was happening. I think a lot of people did. And then just started doing some apparel projects where, we're limited on colors. We only have an 8-color press with 2 flashes. We can do 6, right? So there was a lot of jobs we had to pass on. And so it's been great. DTF has been awesome. And I tell people now, if I didn't have to ever burn a screen again or reclaim a screen, I wouldn't. I would do all DTF. But in all honesty, it's a compliment to screen printing, right? It'll never screen printing will always be king. It always has been. It's like when DTG came out, everybody thought, oh, it's going to ruin the industry, and it hasn't. It's a compliment. So yeah, it's been great.
As far as getting one in-house, that's not on the slate. We've got some other things that are much higher priority that ease up screen printing production that we'd like to see happen probably faster. I think I've heard that some of the equipment can be really difficult to deal with if you're not running it every day. So, the ease of ordering is a lot. It feels more like the Amazon experience for all of that than trying to produce in-house.
Yeah, bringing in-house, that is a commitment, and you really do have to either be that yourself or have someone who is very technologically inclined and can work with the printer, because it is a piece of machinery that could potentially go down, and troubleshooting. And so absolutely, if it's easier for you at the time or even more cost efficient or whatever that may be to be ordering transfers, then absolutely do that. Has there been any, it seems like it's been a positive effect in your business to be able to order the transfers, have that quick turnaround time, multicolor options. Any comments from your customers? Did they notice any difference? Are they happier maybe with even a quicker turnaround time than they're used to with screen printing?
I think it's done from one standpoint. It's made us more competitive on lower quantities, for sure. And able to take those smaller quantity orders that are multicolors that would take an hour to set up on the press. You can have the whole order done in that amount of time. So from that standpoint, I think it's been pretty revolutionary to our business and not having to turn away or contract out business that we wouldn't be able to do because of colors. I think that's...
Yeah, I just to kind of elaborate on that. Yeah, it's really changed our business model a lot, I think, because now we can not just not turn away job. We can go seek out business we want that we know is more technical. And truthfully, to answer the question, the customer, most of the time, they don't even know. the difference. You know? So I tell them like, this is going to be, this is a hybrid transfer. So, this isn't screen printing, but it looks better than screen printing. So I'll do a sample. I'm transparent about it. And they usually will get it. And they'll say, wow, this looks better than screen printing. And we love it. So.
And it's mimicking what they're seeing in retail anyways. You go at any level of retail, you're seeing DTF all over. From budget brands to high end brands, you're seeing it. So it's mimicking what they're used to seeing anyways.
Sure. How many heat presses do you have in-house currently for this?
5 total. So two clamshells and no.
That's 4.
4, sorry.
I was
4.
wondering if you bought new equipment I didn't know
4.
about.
Oh, oops. 4, yes. 4. I'd love to. There's some, we can touch on it, but there's some automated equipment that's out now that's pretty amazing, which I'm sure you've heard a little bit about. And I would like to get into some of that at some point.
What would be the difference there in terms of I guess, Milissa, you had mentioned maybe some other equipment. Is that what you're thinking about doing, and more in the automated sense of this instead of purchasing a DTF printer?
I think equipment wise, what we would be looking at, I think probably going automatic, getting higher output because that's higher margin. That's more dollars in our pocket, which can lead us eventually into buying our own piece of equipment. And I also think the other thing that's probably holding us back from purchasing DTF machinery or printer is the technology is moving so fast, and to stay cutting edge on that piece of it, that's a huge investment. You don't want to be stuck 2 or 3 generations later and still trying to figure out how to use the equipment. So we're just trying to wait till the atmosphere probably calms down a little bit, then we might look at it. But I think the auto press for transfers is
or the Stampinator. A lot of people are using the Stampinator now and just retrofitting their equipment that's in house, and that's the biggest knock on DTF is the speed. It was the same with DTG. It's like too slow. But there's some equipment out now that you can do 400, 500 an hour. Which is every bit as efficient as screen printing in a lot of cases. So probably lean into that before we would lean into buying the actual printer.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, DTF is so new that the technology, especially as it comes now to the United States and more companies that we're all familiar with, that technology is just going to get better and better. And if you could just automate as an option or, purchase your transfers elsewhere and that works for your business, that makes complete sense. Are you DTFing anything other than apparel? I guess I should ask you, what else are you offering other than apparel at high voltage?
We have, and I know there's a lot of different substrates you can use it on. I haven't experimented with any of that, but I'd like to get into doing like some drinkware, and I've seen people do basketballs and soccer balls. Like I've seen all kinds of great stuff. We just haven't tested any of that yet, but I'd definitely like to add that to our offering here. Headwear.
Cool.
We are.
Yeah.
And bags.
Exactly.
And bags. Yeah. A lot of tote bags for some reason. People love, tote bags with DTF.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of that. All right. Well, maybe let's talk about your sales roles. So as we mentioned, Milissa, you work for Lane 7, and Tim, you're now with Supercolor. What are some ways that listeners, DTF print shop owners, can better utilize the relationships with their vendors? Or are there anything that you just would want to shout from the mountaintops? Like, this is the best way to work with us in terms of sales.
I'll let you lead that.
Yeah, I think the number one thing I would love people to do is ask questions. Be honest in your curiosity. We have the privilege of seeing the market from a very high standpoint and see a lot of different verticals, and we have information to share. I think building those relationships are really important, and being honest with where you are on your journey within your business. We might have strategies or seen things that were successful for another company that will help you. Those have really been, I think, the same as for you, is that when our deepest relationships have come from customers who are like, I'm having this issue. How can I fix this? From either an apparel standpoint or just a strategy standpoint. We see it all. We work with millions and millions of dollars of companies, and then tiny little baby shops like ours. We know that there's a whole life cycle there, but.
Yeah. And I leverage your relationship with your vendors. Relationship is such a big part of what we all do in this industry, and save those favors for when you really need them. There's nothing worse than the guy or gal who calls and says, I need a better price on this 72-piece order or 72-piece transfer or whatever. And, and then they get the big order, and then they want an even better price. So, be strategic as a customer on when you want to call your favors in, I think is good advice. And again, utilize the knowledge and the tools, because if either one of us don't know someone who can do something or help you with something, and it doesn't even have to be our brands, we're friends with other reps, and we've worked for other brands, so it's just a great resource, especially if you're new. There's so many new people in our industry. We see them all the time, especially at ISS Long Beach. They're so brand new and they're so wide-eyed and excited, and you know what I mean? And so to be able to help people like that, that's really satisfying for me. I probably spend too much time talking to newbies in the booth because I want to just save them a whole bunch of heartache. And you know what I mean? Equipment is being one of those, right? Like somebody says, I'm going to buy a DTF printer. I'm going to get this, I'm going to buy this automatic, and they're so new. They don't even have a customer base yet. And I'm like, don't do that. I'd love to take your money right now, but please, don't start that way. Grow into your business,
And I think the other thing I would say is diversify, right? So if you have a new brand or something coming and knocking on your door and wants to meet with them, take the 10, 15 minutes to meet with them, see what they have. Don't assume that you've got it all covered. I think that's the number one piece I see from an apparel standpoint, is that people will have gaping holes in kind of their offering. And then you see it all over on like the Facebook groups and everything, that they're like, how do I source this? Well, it's there. You probably just didn't take the meeting.
Interesting. Yeah, I've had definitely conversations with some of the newbies on show floors where they're like, oh, I'm going to buy this, that, and the other. And I'm like, oh, wow, you have a really huge customer base. And they're like, no, only one customer asked me to do this. I'm like, oh, wow, maybe slow your roll for a little bit. I love your enthusiasm, but maybe just like take a step back. But yeah, as you mentioned, you both have like 30 plus years of experience in the industry. People, you have friends in the industry, you network, you've worked with other companies. Is there a benefit not just to having the relationship maybe over the phone or email, but having a relationship with their vendors at industry events? And like kind of talk maybe a little bit about like the value there.
Yeah, I think having a one-on-one relationship with your outside rep, if a company has one, is everything. Because if I have a customer who I know is coming into my booth and I know what there's going on in their, based off our emails, I know what's going on, I can show them a solution right then and there. It becomes a much more customized experience, and they're able to turn on the switch a lot faster, which is great as a sales rep, right? That there's not as long of a lag time. And it just furthers that relationship of that you're paying attention as a rep. I'm paying attention to their business.
Yeah. And, there's always debates amongst all of us in the industry. And some people just hate trade shows and think they're thing of the past and they're useless. And, we can all be honest, and it's all about the hang. It's about the hang, It's a good place to go see new equipment and new blanks and new apparel and all that. But it's really about the relationship building. So to me, trade shows will always have a place for that, because when you get that one-on-one time at an event or something and you exchange information, that's when you have a resource. And we all know, like, I have people call me at like midnight sometimes, like, man, I got this project, it's a rush. And, if we hadn't met and I didn't know them, I'm not taking that call, and vice versa. If I'm trying to get in to an enterprise type customer in my current role, and I don't have a contact, I can make a few calls and I can get the right person, and that's all because of relationships and trade shows, you know.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned maybe don't abuse those relationships. Are there any other tips for people like maybe don't do this when working with your vendor?
I'll let you take that.
Don't lie. It's not worth it.
Don't ask for too many free samples and then never order anything. Right?
Yeah,
on the apparel side, right? Like that's a big one.
I think don't lie. Specifically, like I see all the claims for Lane 7, right? And so luckily when I'm talking to most people, they don't realize that I know what I'm doing and I can see very quickly, right? I know that the apparel is the most expensive part of this process. And if you screw up 2,000 pieces, that's very expensive. So I think don't lie.
That's something it is good to touch on because people will always blame either the garment or the ink or, you know, it's always something other than the printer himself. And it's almost always the printer's fault. They did something wrong, right? Whether that was screen printing, they didn't cure the shirt all the way, or they used the wrong kind of ink, they didn't use a blocker on a poly-rich fabric. It's always something. And they're always quick to point, it's the shirt, you know, but it's not, you know, it's almost 95% of the time printer error or just something that they didn't do properly. So, you know, again, that comes back to the relationship part is, you know, we'll know, you know, specifically for Milissa on the blank side, if somebody sends a claim in that, you know, they want credit on, you know, 250 shirts or something that they printed bad and they blame the shirt. We have a shop. We test it right here. And then we send them a video. Looks fine. You know, prints just fine here. So, you know, you could still help them. Maybe, you know, give them a discount on their next order or something. But yeah, don't abuse the relationship, I guess.
Yeah. And in part of that is, you know, when you're asking for something, be clear about what you're asking for and why, because those are all the things we're going to ask for anyways. Like, I need a lower price. Why? Those are helpful things, you know, and anything you can do to speed up that time will help you in the end because it will get the order in faster, make your customers' experience with you even better if all the information's given up front.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And don't trick industry vets who have a print shop in their backyard. I mean, like, you're going to be able to test that.
It's led to some interesting conversations.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I mean, speaking of shirts, Milissa, have you seen any change in blank apparel purchases at Lane 7 now that DTF is around, considering like the versatility of shirt type? You know, you can print on anything these days. Are you seeing any changes there in terms of on the purchasing side?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I think every print shop in the country would probably be nodding their head at this, is order quantities are going down, quality is going up. And so, you know, we're not seeing the huge orders that we used to see in, you know, 2020, 21. That market has vastly shifted. And now you're seeing higher quality, more expensive garments, lower quantity.
Yeah, a lot of it's because of the on-demand, right? The DTF is a big part of, and you don't have to inventory, you know, 1,000 shirts at a time. You know, you can order 72, 144 and print as needed. So you're not tying up money on the floor. It's been a huge shift in that way. And from an apparel standpoint, I think even the fabrications, you know, because with DTF, you can decorate on tri-blends and performance fabrics and do multiple colors. And, you know, we have some technology been working on the, like a low melt solution that cures a lot faster. So you don't get the little marks that you would normally get from heat pressing. So, you know, to her point, you know, the technology is going so fast. So when you buy a DTF machine that's version 2.0, and then, you know, it's like buying the iPhone, and then at Christmas, hey, we have iPhone 15 or 16 after you dropped 50 grand on, that machine. And now you got this one that can do low mount, or you can do metallic, or whatever it may be. It's, it's really opening up a whole avenue of ways to decorate on different substrates and fabrics. So I think apparel manufacturers in particular are realizing that those limitations are not as, restrictive as they once were. Like with, DTG, it had to be 100% cotton unless you had the cornede and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think on the apparel side, definitely it's opening up a lot of possibilities with DTF.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, this is a far-flung thought that I haven't even told my owners about yet, but seeing a different fabrics start to come into our side of the industry that typically you can't print on. You think about all the silicone stuff that you see in retail that you can't print on, that maybe we start to lean in and get a little bit more creative on the blanket apparel side and respond to what we're seeing in elevated retail.
Right. It's kind of almost not necessarily whiplash, but you kind of go so long with one certain blank apparel that you can print on, or at least you can screen print on, and then DTG comes out and you're like, oh, wait, well, we can't print polyester on that. Or, okay, maybe now we're going to create a pre-treated shirt. But now with DTF, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like we can kind of keep going with what we were doing already. But as you mentioned, Milissa, like maybe add on different types of fabrics in future lines. And also with the print on demand, most shops now, if they have DTG or DTF, they don't have a minimum order quantity, which maybe before was 20 or 40 shirts for customers. Are you seeing the same thing? Do you have a minimum order quantity at Lane 7, or can someone purchase one shirt if they want?
Minimum is one shirt. I'll spot half, you buy the other half. So it's, but that's a big piece of how Lane 7 got started, is being kind of that brand for everybody.
Okay, we danced around it a little bit, just kind of talking about just as more manufacturers are offering DTF machines, specifically here in the States, better customer service. But we also said how the technology is really advancing because it's in its infancy. Do you think that there will be a drastic change in the amount of printers ordering transfers? And kind of where do you see, or maybe where do you want to see DTF in the next few years?
Yeah, I think we're only scratching the surface. I think the early adapters, there's some people out there that adapted early to the technology, and they're having extreme success. So I think, I expect to see, at least in our business at Supacolor, 100% growth is really what I'd like to see for 24. There you go, Rum. We're in Hazel if you're listening to this, but now I'm committed. But yeah, the industry as a whole, I think once the key is getting it in people's hands and showing them how to use it. I think a lot of transfer manufacturers, or even people that are buying the machines themselves, they don't necessarily get the training they need, and they end up giving up on it, or they have issues. So it's key that you get it into people's hands. And like for me, I'm going to be traveling this year into big shops and big brands, and I'm going to show them how to use it, and I'm going to show them how amazing that it performs. That's the key. If you just send out samples and little bags of transfers, half the time they just sit on your shelf and you never even try them. So I think the more that people actually try it and see the results, they're just going to lean into it, because think about how many doors it opens if you're, even if you're just really small, and you can take these jobs that you never would be able to take. And, at the end of the day, it's about time. What is your time worth? Like the time, and anybody who owns a screen printing shop knows that the printing is the easy part. Once the machine's set up and the inks are made and everything's registered and the shirt card's full, that's the easy part. But they never talk about the hours of, degreasing the screen once you get the screen, then cutting the screen, then burning the screen, setting it up, mixing inks, registering, taping, changing your palette tape. Like there's this long process of things that has to happen that nobody ever talks about, and with DTF and transfers, you get the transfers, you put the shirt on, you put the transfer on, you hot press, you peel it, you're done. and yeah, it may take 15 seconds instead of 2 seconds for the squeegees to stroke. But at the end of the day, like, what is your time worth? How much time do you have to spend with all those things you have to do? And then that's not even talking about the tear down part. Now you got to take the machine down. And if you had to take down a 12 color job and all the squeegees and flood bars, it's time. It's a lot of time involved. So,
and from a labor standpoint, right? One person can run a very large and with minimal training that you can have a new person start and 2 hours later generating revenue versus teaching someone for weeks, years how to screen print. I think that's going to be huge because I know labor is always a sticky point. It helps keep your overhead low. If you only need one person to run a heat press, that's a lot easier, and you can be out selling and generating more revenue that way.
Yeah, I always joke that if I can do it, literally anyone else can do it because I'm a journalist. I have no, background in printing. I remember I was at my first trade show when I was working in the apparel industry, and someone was showing me, how you set up a screen and I just was like, it keeps going. It's never ending. There's so many different steps.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, DTF, I can understand that, and I can do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with everything that you're saying.
Yeah, and it is a craft, screen printing, and I'm very much into the craft of I love screen printing. To me, it's still the coolest. But yeah, just the time and the labor, being able to train somebody in 15 minutes how to do transfers instead of spending weeks and months showing them the screen printing process and having them understand angle and pressure. And, it's just such a quicker learning curve.
For sure. All right, well, now let's get to the good stuff. What everyone wants to know. What is it like working with your partner, not only in the same business, but in the same industry, multiple different layers there?
I love it. The time when it's not fun is when we don't know how to turn it off, and we'll slip in and out of personal and work conversations that there's no hard line, and we both work from home. So that gets really interesting, but it's nice being work from home and remote and at trade shows is having somebody that you can bounce ideas off of and still have a coworker in that sense. Really enjoying, him being not out of the apparel space and being something that's more complementary that we can start to do a lot of more things together. In a business sense, for that is always fun. And then, yeah, it's challenging. Anyone who's doing this, and I know there's a lot of partners that run businesses together and everything, it can be challenging, and that your work brain and your relationship brain are not the same one, and having space for both of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what was the point? We're not competitors anymore, which is nice. When we were both selling apparel, that was, that could make for some awkward conversations or dinners where I couldn't invite her to dinner with me, right? Or she couldn't invite me with her. Now it's very complimentary, so Lane 7 and Supercolor already had a good relationship before I came on. So it's great that we can use our network together to help grow both of the brands that we work for. And it is, I get to work with my best friend, and she's super smart. So I utilize her a lot. I have questions, and we help each other as a couple and a family. And I think we both really love this industry. We've obviously been, in it for many years. And every time I say I'm going to do something else, I get sucked back in. And that's what happens, because it's fun. At the end of the day, you make lifelong relationships. And that's how we met you, Adrian, is at an event. And you've become a good friend of ours as well. And I think a secret, if you are a couple and you're in a relationship and you're in the same industry and same business, is to know when to turn it off and to walk away from the scene and, whatever party or events going on, and stay connected, and a lot of times we'll just ghost we'll go have our own dinner somewhere, not do a customer dinner or a team dinner. And we make sure that we still spend time as a couple because it's important. You know, you can easily get sucked into the whole, vortex of the scene of, our industry. And we make a point to just, pull away from that once in a while.
And it took us a long time to learn that. That was a post-COVID return back, is that we take one night of every trade show we go to, and we have our own date night, and that no one else is invited. It's just, a couple hours where we're decompressing, figuring out what the heck just happened during that day, because trade shows for us are absolutely insane. And I think the other part, people are like, well, you live with them. Why would you go on a date when you're out of town? But we don't live together all the time. We split our time between LA and Austin. So for us, that time is vitally important.
Yeah, and I think especially
live
as you
apart,
mentioned,
maybe that's the other thing.
yeah, just live separately.
Marriage work.
That makes for a happy marriage.
I think there's value in that statement for sure. Having some independence and time away makes you want to spend time, together, and that time is more important. But I also like what you mentioned about working from home, and not necessarily maybe working on the same things, but being in the same industry, you can bounce ideas off of each other and kind of just have those conversations. So many of us, myself included, we work from home and we don't get that kind of like riffing or camaraderie really anymore, other than like Slack messages, which just isn't the same. But it's nice that you guys have each other where you can just say, what do you think about this? Or even, as you mentioned, like having that decompression after a crazy trade show or event to be like, yeah, this is what happened, or this is what I saw. It's really cool to be able to have that.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the other big piece, I could talk about this for a long time, but I think the other piece, when you are both in sales and from either a shop standpoint or our work lives, is knowing when one has to be pushed forward, the other one pulls back, and figuring out that cadence within a relationship. I think that's really, really important.
What do you mean by that exactly?
So
learning
if we're in a social situation or something like where it's going to strategically benefit you more than it will me, I yield back, that I'm more of the supportive spouse in that standpoint. And he's done, and I'll lift him up and he does the same for me. So, having that yin and yang, that you don't both need to be on all the time. Let one shine.
I'm jealous of that because for me, I have to be on the entire time. I don't have someone to just, and it can get really exhausting at trade shows where you're on 24/7. And so does that get a little bit exhausting when you've worked all day, whether you're at home or you're at the trade show, and then it's like, oh my gosh, we're still talking about this? Or do you find it exciting? Like we share the same interests, or is it like, oh my gosh, we have to stop? And is there a time where you say, we don't talk about this after 7 p.m. or is there any kind of boundary there?
We should probably have one.
We try. That's a good point, Adrian. Like we try to do that. Like when we say, okay, we're going to go have our date night dinner, and we're not going to talk about work, and we're not going to talk about the industry. And we just do, because again, we love it, and it's part of our lives. And, we try not to obsess over it. And like, we constantly remind each other, okay, stop talking about work. Let's talk about something else, But yeah, it definitely helps to have a partner to just discuss those things and yeah, just not being on anymore. Like we're, as salespeople, they think, you included, that we're all extroverts, right? And when we're on, we are, right? 'Cause that's our job. You have to be extroverted and you have to be social. But I think a lot of us, and I can't speak for you, but we're really more introverts. Like Milissa, she hates people.
Well, I did know that.
Kind of true.
I shouldn't. That's probably the wrong way to word that, but
it's true.
It gets too people-y sometimes. She'll say, I don't want to get to that. Like you go to that. You go to that on your own. I'm going to sit in my hotel room and get caught up on my emails. I'm probably a little more extroverted just because I am. But yeah, at the end of the day and, at the end of a stretch of shows or events, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just come in here and play music and don't talk to no one,
Yep.
So is it the same for you? Like, are you like ready to not talk to people after doing a show or?
I need like a day to decompress. So I actually, I don't know, I kind of thrive on being around people. Like it does bring me energy until a certain point. And then once I've hit like that third day or fourth, I'm like, I got to just, I can't talk to anyone for 24 hours and I just need to zone out and just have that kind of decompression. But now that I know about your ghosting tactic, I will make sure that I don't bug you guys on one of the nights of the events. I'm not gonna crash any of your time together.
It's usually the night everyone's like, come to dinner. We're like, nope, we've got plans. But the other thing that I think happens for me specifically, he'll start talking about something and then it will stress me out about work on the other side. And I'm like, I can't, you can vent to somebody else, but it can't be me right now because you're just causing my anxiety to go through the roof about something that I feel guilty about unrelated to it. So there is that.
Right.
Yeah. It could be competitive, like how many calls did you do today? How many meetings have you had this week?
Yep.
You guys competitive? No way.
Oh yeah.
He is way more than I am.
So healthy boundaries, finding a balance, maybe taking some time at a trade show just for yourselves. I think these are all really great tips and tools for those who are either partners in their own business or work in the same industry. Really great. All right. Before we wrap, anything else that you want to share with our listeners about DTF, Lane 7, High Voltage, Supacolor?
Buy it all. No.
I think, again, without being, brand specific, I think DTF is great for our industry. And I think it's going to help elevate it. I think you're going to see with the combination of AI generated artwork, the possibilities are endless. And we're going to see some really amazing work, I think, coming out of the industry and in retail too. I've seen a lot of amazing AI generated artwork that is just like mind blowing. And to have to screen print that or have to do, sim process or, 24 colors or something, it's really exciting time, I think, for the technology and for our industry. And I'm excited to be working for companies on the cutting edge of that. And I think Lane 7 is a great brand. She won't talk about it, but I think, it's one of the up and coming hot brands. So, keep buying it. Help support the Gibsons.
That's right. We need date night to be funded.
Can't afford date night if we don't sell anything.
No, I think it is really fun to be kind of on the come up with a brand, and getting people in it has been absolutely incredible, and seeing people's reactions day in, day out, I think is the most fun. So if you haven't tried it, try it now.
Yeah. And High Voltage, if you're ever in Austin, Adrian, you should come here and
come
do
jam
one of your podcasts and play some music with us. Yeah.
That's true. Well, I don't know about the music part, but I should have just flown in and we could have done the podcast live from High Voltage next time for sure.
Yes.
All right.
Cool. Well, where can our listeners find you? Instagram handles, YouTube, website?
So for High Voltage, on Instagram, it's High Voltage Studios ATX, or High Voltage Studio, not plural, High Voltage Studio ATX. Facebook, High Voltage Studios. We don't do a lot on Facebook. And then our website is highvoltagestudios.com.
Yep. And then you can find us both on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, and then Supacolor.com.
Lane7.com.
Lane7.com. There you go.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining the podcast, Milissa and Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. We'll catch you on the next episode of the DTF Printing Podcast. In the meantime,
head to DTFprinting.com to discover new ways to grow your print business.
Thanks for listening.